What's up, guys? Rogue Bludger here with Unashamed Gaming, bringing you this week's Unashamed Bible Study. We are in Luke chapter 15 this week, and we are going to be talking about a couple different parables that Jesus uses and kind of relates it to the Pharisees and some of their feelings that they are having here. I guess at a dinner, or well, at just a talk that Jesus gives. And so we're going to jump right into it, and it says that the tax collectors and sinners, it puts sinners in quotations. I think just because, obviously all people are sinners and we all fall short of the glory of God, yet the people that were there, being the Pharisees, view those tax collectors and the people like that as more sinners than they are, as the unrighteous. So it says they were all gathered around to hear him. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." They're saying, like, this man who's supposed to be holy is welcoming in these sinners and people who are not, Christ-like, or not holy people, and he's eating with them when he should be, eating with us, the righteous ones who study his word and things like that. And so Jesus tells them this parable, and he's going to tell, this is the first of three parables that he tells in this chapter, and they all kind of have the same message. So, but I will try to break them down a little bit. And he says, "Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Does he not leave the 99 in the open country and go for the lost sheep until he finds it? And when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and goes home. Then he calls his friends and neighbors together and says, 'Rejoice with me, I have found my lost sheep.' I tell you that in the same way there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who do not need to repent." So I think he's kind of saying here that, the greatest joy is when somebody comes to God, accepts Jesus, becomes a Christian. I think that's, to him, he says that's the greatest joy in heaven, the greatest thing that could happen. And it's not, it's not all about, it's good, obviously, to devote yourself to the study, but it's not all about, like, who knows more. It's kind of like Bible verses. It's not all about who knows the most Bible verses. It's about, living your life for Christ. That's what really brings joy in heaven, I think, is what he's saying. We go on to another short parable, basically the same story. It says, it says, "Or suppose a woman who has 10 silver coins and loses one." And in this silver coin is about the equivalent of a denarius, the Roman coinage of about 1 day's work. So it's about a whole day's work that it's talking about, and 10 of them. It says, "And suppose she loses one. Does she not light a lamp and sweep the house and search carefully until she finds it? And when she finds it, she calls her friends and neighbors together and says, 'Rejoice with me, I have found my lost coin.' In this same way, I tell you, there is rejoicing in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents." So again, basically the same point, just that the rejoicing is so much greater when somebody, just gives their life to Christ than when they just, talk about how much they know. So we go on here to the last parable. A pretty common, or a pretty popular parable is the parable often called the parable of the prodigal son, the lost son. And it says there's a man who has two sons, and he goes out, or one of the sons comes to him and says, "Give me my inheritance now." So he divides the inheritance between the two sons, and one of them stays at home and, continues to work, and the other one goes out to a far-off country. He blows it all on, life, just having a good time, I guess. And eventually it says that there was a severe famine in this country. After he loses all his money, all his inheritance, there's a severe famine that comes, and he is unable to feed himself. He's hungry, so he gets a job feeding the pigs. And it says he was wishing that he could eat the food that the pigs gave, or that he was giving the pigs, because that's how hungry he was. And, to me, I feel like this is kind of, it's a parable, so it's a story with, like, another meaning. And this is kind of how we are, before we find Christ. It's that we're we put our stock or our money or whatever, we put our efforts, our lives into things that aren't fulfilling. We think they're what we want. We think it's something that can help us to be a better person, have a more enjoyable life. And then when hard times come, we find out that those things really don't have anything to do with true life, what it means to have a good life. They don't really have anything to do with, you know, just they're not really good things. I mean, they're fun, when it happens or whatever, but it's not something that we really need to be spending our time doing because it has no depth. There's no meaning in it. And that's what he realizes. And he thinks to himself, it says he came to his senses, and he says, how many of my father's hired men have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired men. And so he gets up and he goes to his father, and he comes back, and he's got this line prepared. And it says, while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. This is the same feeling that God gets when we repent and when we come to him. He's just, it's not an anger. I think a lot of people are afraid, God's angry at me, or God's mad at me for this. And, sometimes there may be punishment, but it's not in the sense of, eye for an eye or whatever. It's more or less God's just happy to have you back. He's happy to have his son or daughter return to him, and that's kind of what's exemplified here. When we return to God, when we repent, or when we come to God for the first time, it's just overwhelming joy. It should be both for you and for God, overwhelming joy that relationship has been restored. And so the son says his line. He says, Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your sons. But the father says to his servants, quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Bring a ring and put it on his finger, and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And so they began to celebrate. So, they're going crazy. They're all happy that this is... that this son has come back. But the other brother, the one who stayed and worked loyally the whole time, he says, he's mad. He's like, this guy has gone and left and, disgraced you, and then he comes back and he's treated better than me. And the father says, you're my son. I love you just as much, and all that I have is yours. But we have to celebrate when your brother who was lost has returned. He says, here are his words. He says, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And this brother that stayed at home is kind of being compared to the Pharisees, I think, in this situation. Because if you remember, this is all following the Pharisees at the beginning of the chapter, saying, this man is welcoming sinners to eat with them. He's rejoicing with sinners, and he should be rejoicing with us, the faithful ones. And I think the main point of this chapter is that those who God and Jesus rejoice with are not those who, like I said, know the most Bible verses or live the best life. It's those who come to him with, arms open, brokenhearted, and just asking for forgiveness, asking to be saved. Those are the ones that God really just, brings joy to heaven. It's not about, I said it before, I'll say it again, it's not about what you've got rather than, just being open with God. I'm sorry if that's worded a little weird, but I don't know how to say it better than that. But that's the end of this chapter. And we're getting on towards the end here of Luke. I hope you guys are enjoying it. I know this one's probably the shortest one yet, but just keep in mind that it's all going to kind of come to a culmination here at the end. It's all these things, we have kind of a different main theme or topic every week, and they're all part of who Jesus is. They're all part of who Jesus Christ is and what he's done for us. And this is a story leading to an end, like any good story does. And it's a true story about a guy who loved us enough to, do all these things for us and ultimately sacrifice himself. So I thank you guys for watching again. If you liked it, hit the like button. Let me know. Leave a comment. Let me know what you thought about it. If you disagree, agree, have any thoughts, and share it so other people can see it. But again, guys, I thank you for watching it, and we'll see you next week.